The silence up there was different. It wasn't the empty kind that echoes and makes you feel alone. It was full, thick with birdsong, wind brushing pine needles together, the distant rush of a stream that sounded like the earth breathing. The kind of silence that didn't ask anything from me, the kind that let me finally exhale. For 43 years, my life had been measured in alarms, deadlines, and other people's needs. I had woken before the sun, ridden crowded buses, swallowed insults with my coffee, and smiled through exhaustion because someone was always counting on me. A child, a job, a future that was always asterisk, almost asterisk here, but never quite arrived. Until now, the cottage sat on the edge of the mountain like it had been waiting for me. Small, wooden, unpretentious, a crooked chimney, a porch that creaked when I stepped on it, and windows that caught the morning light like they were grateful for it. When I unlocked the door for the first time, the scent of old timber and cold air greeted me, and for a moment my chest ached with something dangerously close to happiness. "This is mine," I whispered, just to hear the words out loud. I hadn't bought it to impress anyone. There were no neighbors to envy it, no guests to parade through it. I bought it because I was tired in my bones, tired in places sleep never reached. I bought it because retirement was supposed to mean rest, and rest, I had learned, did not exist where expectations lived. Up here there were none. My mornings became simple things: tea on the porch while mist lifted off the trees, bread toasted on the old stove, a notebook I wrote in without purpose, just to see my thoughts spill onto paper without being edited for someone else's comfort. I walked the narrow trail behind the cottage and let my knees complain without apologizing to anyone for slowing down. At night I slept deeper than I had in years, and in those quiet hours memories surfaced uninvited but persistent. I remembered holding my son for the first time, his tiny fingers wrapping around mine with shocking strength. I remembered promising him the world, even though I had no idea how I would give it to him. I worked extra shifts, skipped vacations, wore coats until the lining tore because tuition came first. Braces came first, his asterisk future came first. I told myself that was love, and maybe it was. Or maybe it was fear that if I ever chose myself, even once, I would lose him. As the years passed, our conversations thinned. They became shorter, sharper, practical. He called when he needed advice, money, reassurance. Rarely to ask how I was, rarely to share joy without attaching a problem to it. Still, when my grandson was born, something in me softened again. That child, those bright eyes, that unguarded laugh, felt like a second chance. I sent gifts. I saved little amounts of money just in case. I imagined him visiting the cottage one day, chasing butterflies on the trail, learning that the world could be quiet and kind. That dream warmed me as much as the fireplace did, so when my phone stayed silent those first 2 days, I didn't think much of it. I told myself my son was busy, life was expensive, people had problems, love didn't need constant proof. On the second evening, I stood on the porch watching the sky bruise into purple and gold. The mountain air was sharp, clean. I remember thinking asterisk, I earned this asterisk. Every blister, every sleepless night, every sacrifice had finally led me here. Phone rang just as the sun slipped behind the trees. I didn't know it yet, but that sound so ordinary, so familiar, was the first crack in the peace I had just begun to trust. The ringtone felt louder up here. Down in the city, noise swallowed everything: sirens, engines, voices overlapping until nothing truly stood out. But in the mountains, sound traveled differently. It cut through the air. It demanded attention. When my phone rang, it was as if the trees themselves paused to listen. I looked at the screen, my son. For a brief, foolish moment, my heart lifted. I imagined he was calling to ask how the cottage was, to tell me he was proud, to say he and the boy might visit soon. I wiped my hands on my sweater, suddenly aware of how peaceful I must sound when I answered. "Hello," I said softly, There was no greeting on the other end, no warmth, just a sharp exhale, as if I had already inconvenienced him by existing. "We need to talk," he said. "Not asterisk we should asterisk. Not asterisk can we asterisk. Need." The word landed heavy, like a demand dressed up as urgency. I straightened the porch rail cold beneath my fingers. "All right," I replied. "What's wrong?" He didn't answer right away. I could hear papers rustling, a keyboard clicking. He was multitasking, handling my life in between other, more important things. "I'm in trouble," he finally said, "financial trouble. My stomach tightened. Old reflexes kicked in immediately." How much? How fast? Where could I pull from? Even after everything, the instinct to fix things for him rose without permission. "I've had a few bad months," he continued, the banks pushing. "If I don't secure collateral, they'll take the house." Asterisk the house. Asterisk the word conjured an image of my grandson's bedroom. The dinosaur sheets I'd bought him, the little nightlight shaped like a moon. My grip tightened on the phone. "What kind of collateral?" I asked. There was a pause, not a thoughtful one, a calculated one. "Your cottage." The world tilted. For a moment I thought I had misheard. The wind moved through the trees, sighing, as if the mountain itself disapproved. "My cottage," I repeated. "Yes," he said, impatient now. "You just bought it. It's perfect. No mortgage complications, clean. The bank will accept it immediately." He said it like he was talking about a spare tool in a shed, something unused, something he already considered his. "I just moved in," I said, the words small even to my own ears. "You know that." "So," he snapped, "you're alone up there. You don't asterisk need asterisk it." That sentence hurt more than I expected. I don't need it, as if need were the only thing that justified a dream, as if my life had value only when it was useful to someone else. "I worked my whole life for this," I said carefully. "I told you that." "And I'm telling you my son will be homeless," he shot back. His voice sharpened, honed into something cruel. "Your grandson. Unless you sign the papers." There it was. The blade slid in smoothly, expertly, aimed straight at my softest place. I felt my chest constrict. Images flooded my mind. My grandson standing in the rain with a backpack too big for his shoulders, asking why Grandma hadn't helped. Shame rose hot and immediate, just like it always had when my son was disappointed in me. "You wouldn't let that happen," he continued, sensing the opening. "I know you. You'd never forgive yourself." He was right about that. Or at least he had always been. My hands trembled. I sank into the old wooden chair, the porch groaning beneath my weight. The mountain air, so clean moments ago, felt thin now, difficult to breathe. "When do you need an answer?" I asked. "I'm coming up tomorrow with a real estate agent." He said, "Have the documents ready. Don't make this harder than it has to be. Tomorrow." He hadn't asked if he could visit, hadn't asked if the drive was all right. He had already decided, planned. Arranged my compliance like a meeting in his calendar. "I understand," I said. The words surprised us both. There was a brief pause on the line. Suspicion flickered. "You do, yes," I replied. My voice was calm, eerily so. "I understand. Good," he said, relief rushing in too quickly. "I knew you'd do the right thing." The right thing. He hung up without saying goodbye. I stared at the dark screen of my phone for a long time. The forest had gone still. Even the birds were silent now, as if mourning something unnamed. I felt the familiar weight of guilt pressing down on me, but beneath it, something new stirred. Something colder, clearer. For the first time, I didn't feel like arguing. I didn't feel like begging. I felt like listening. And in that silence, as the trees creaked and the night settled in, a single thought rooted itself deep inside me. Asterisk, he believes I am powerless. Asterisk, I stood slowly, walked into the cottage, and closed the door behind me. By morning, I knew exactly what I was going to do. That night, sleep didn't come easily, but clarity did. I sat at the small kitchen table long after the fire burned down to embers, the cottage wrapped in shadows and moonlight. The ticking of the old clock on the wall sounded louder than it should have, each second pressing forward like a question I could no longer ignore. When you spend a lifetime putting others first, people assume you are incapable of putting yourself anywhere else. They mistake endurance for weakness, silence for ignorance, kindness for compliance. My son had learned that lesson well. What he never noticed, what he never bothered to notice, was that I had spent decades navigating contracts, reading fine print, signing documents that could ruin or save me depending on a single word. I had learned to ask quiet questions. I had learned to listen when people thought I wasn't paying attention. And I had learned something else, too, never to trust anyone who rushed you when money was involved. The cottage wasn't just a purchase born of whimsy. I had researched for months land records, zoning laws, easements, mineral rights. The mountain had a history, and I respected it enough to learn its rules before planting my flag on it. The real estate agent who sold it to me had smiled when I asked certain questions, the careful ones. The uncommon ones. "You're thorough," he'd said. "I've survived." I'd replied. I pulled a folder from the drawer beneath the table. Inside were neatly stacked papers, copies of deeds, addendums, legal notes I had scribbled in the margins late at night, while my tea went cold. I spread them out now, smoothing each page like a ritual. Ownership wasn't always as simple as people assumed. Neither was leverage. I thought about my son, how he spoke to me now, how his voice had hardened over the years. When had it happened? When had love turned into expectation? I remembered the first time he'd raised his voice at me, how shocked I'd been, how I'd apologized even though I hadn't done anything wrong. That was my mistake. Each apology had taught him something, that pressure worked, that guilt was a reliable tool, that I would always fold. Until now, I stood and walked to the window. The moonlight washed over the trees, silver and still. The mountain didn't rush. It didn't threaten. It waited. It endured. So would I, but not the way he expected. I thought of my grandson again. The boy deserved stability, yes, but not at the cost of teaching him that love meant exploitation. I wanted him to grow up knowing that boundaries were not betrayals, and that kindness did not mean surrendering your spine. I reached for another envelope, tucked carefully beneath the others. This one I had prepared quietly, months ago, when I first felt the ache of distance growing between my son and me. A precaution, I'd told myself, just in case love failed. The clock ticked on. Outside, a branch snapped under the weight of a passing deer. Life continued, indifferent to human drama. That, strangely, comforted me. By the time the first hint of dawn crept over the ridge, my decision was no longer emotional. It was clean, precise. I made breakfast slowly, deliberately. I swept the floor. I set the documents in a neat stack on the table where they would be impossible to miss. When my son arrived, he would expect tears, pleas, hesitation. What he would find instead was a woman he had never truly seen. Someone who had been paying attention all along, and the cottage, quiet, unassuming, patient, would finally speak for itself. They arrived just before noon. I heard the car long before I saw it, the low grind of an engine straining against the mountain road, a sound that felt foreign and intrusive in a place that preferred wind and birds. Gravel crunched sharply as the tires stopped in front of the cottage, the noise echoing like a challenge. I didn't step outside right away. I poured myself another cup of tea and let it steep properly. Through the window, I watched my son get out first. He looked around with thinly veiled irritation, as if the mountain had personally inconvenienced him by existing. A man in a tailored coat followed, clipboard tucked under his arm. Shoes already dusted with dirt, he clearly resented. The real estate agent. I opened the door only when they knocked. "Mom," my son said, brisk, already halfway past me, as if he owned the place. "We're on a tight schedule." "Of course you are," I thought. The agent offered a polite, professional smile. "A lovely location," he said, scanning the room with practiced eyes. His gaze lingered too long on the beams, the fireplace, the windows. Numbers were already forming behind his eyes. "Please," I said, stepping aside. "Come in." They walked through the cottage like vultures with measuring tape. "This will do nicely," my son muttered. "I told you it was valuable. Valuable, not asterisk beloved asterisk, not asterisk earned asterisk. Just valuable." I let them talk. Let them assume. Let them discuss refinancing options, market appreciation, how quickly things could move once the papers were signed. My son barely looked at me, already relieved, already victorious. Finally, the agent cleared his throat. "We'll just need to review the deed and collateral documents," he said, businesslike. "Then we can proceed." I nodded and slid the folder across the table. "Everything you need is there." My son smiled for the first time that day. It was a familiar smile, the one he used when he got his way. "See, I told you she'd understand." The agent opened the folder. The first page did not trouble him, nor the second. Then his brow furrowed. He adjusted his glasses, flipped back a page, then forward again. His mouth tightened. "Is there a problem?" my son asked, irritation creeping in. The agent didn't answer right away. He read more carefully now, slower. His color began to drain. "This property," the agent said cautiously, "cannot be used as collateral." "What?" my son laughed. "That's ridiculous." The agent swallowed. "The land is held in a protective trust." Silence fell hard and sudden. "A what?" my son snapped. "A trust," the agent repeated. "Established at the time of purchase, the owner retains full lifetime residency rights, but the property itself is legally insulated. It cannot be leveraged, sold, or seized by creditors." My son turned to me sharply. "What did you do?" I met his gaze, really met it, for the first time in years. "I protected myself," I said, then calmly, "and my grandson." The agent flipped to another page, hands now visibly unsteady. "There's also a secondary clause," he said quietly. "In the event of financial instability or debt-related legal action involving immediate family members, the beneficiary bypasses them entirely." My son's face twisted. Beneficiary of what? I reached for the final document and placed it gently on the table. "The cottage," I said, "and the land." The room erupted. "You went behind my back," he shouted, slamming his hand on the table. "You don't trust me." "I trusted you for decades," I replied, my voice steady. "That's how I know better now." The agent stood abruptly. I'm sorry. I can't be involved in this." He gathered his things with shaking hands and hurried for the door, glancing back once as if the walls themselves had spoken. My son rounded on me, eyes wild. "You've ruined everything." "No," I said softly. "You did. I just refused to let you ruin me too." He screamed, then raw, furious, uncontained. The sound echoed off the beams, off the stone, off the mountain itself. It felt like a confession more than an accusation. When he finally stormed out, the door rattling in his wake, the cottage fell silent again. I sat down slowly, my knees weak but my heart light. Outside, the trees swayed gently, unbothered. The mountain remained. So did I. For the first time in my life, the quiet wasn't something I had earned through sacrifice. It was something I had claimed, and it answered back.